Isa Masharbash. I'm the broker of record here at Provident Legacy Real Estate Services. We have 2 offices. We have one in Jersey City on the corner of 3rd Street and Newark Avenue, and here in this space here in Bayonne. And we're big on education. We're big on informing real estate professionals what's happening, how they could improve their lives, their careers, how they could serve their clients better, and this is why we're doing this. Now, by show of hands, how many here are connected somehow in the real estate industry? Realtors, developers, agents. Woo! Oh, wow! That's exactly the audience I was hoping to bring in. Wow. Good, that's fantastic. We have 89, 91% of the crowd here in real estate. That's fantastic. Thank you for coming out. You are investing in yourself. You're investing in your knowledge, your education, how to sell Bayonne better. When I was interviewing the mayor, I was telling him this is important to us because we sell Bayonne. We're renting apartments. We're selling condos and 2-family houses and single-family houses and multi-units and Broadway, but we need to know what we're selling a little better because it's changing, right? So my hope tonight is that you walk away more informed than ever before. This is not a political event. This is not vote for me. This is let me learn. Let me learn as much as possible about my city. I've lived in Bayonne for 20 years. I graduated from Bayonne High School. I own a home in Bayonne. I own a business in Bayonne. I'm very concerned about Bayonne, so that's why we're doing this. So without further ado, let me introduce you to your mayor, Jimmy Davis.
All right, before we get into a Q&A, they asked me if I would just talk a little bit, pretty much about myself. And the only thing I could think of is I'm going to talk about why I'm here today. And I don't mean today, at this moment, standing here talking to you. I'm talking about why I'm the mayor, okay? Because if you look where this city was 4 years ago and think where it was within the last 10, maybe 15 years prior to that, if you lived in Bayonne and you saw what was going on, you understood, especially if you were a lifelong resident, and you lived in Bayonne, you were born and raised here, you understood where the city was going. And to be honest with you, the city was going nowhere. Okay, 4 years ago, I think the one time that I really proved to myself why I was running for mayor was when we had an event in December at the Villa Maria, and it was a fundraiser. And I had a friend of mine and his niece, who was in college at the time, had done a video. Okay, now I'm a huge, anybody here a Bruce Springsteen fan? All right. You know, I love Bruce Springsteen's music, most of it. And we did a video. He drove up and down Broadway and took pictures of every vacant store and every vacant lot. Okay, and that video that night was the first time I saw it. And we showed it, and we did it to the song My Hometown, which I loved up until that night. And I'm telling you, when that video played to that song, and they showed, I didn't even realize how bad it was. And that song, to be honest with you, right as soon as it was done and the video was done, I had to start talking, and I couldn't because it broke my heart. And that leads me to right where I am right now, 3.5 years later, and why when we were talking about, you know, every campaign has to have a slogan or motto or something like that, and I was like, you know what, it's plain and simple to me. I did this because I love Bayonne. You know, I was a police officer here. I grew up here. I hung out on 4th and the Boulevard. I hung out down the Trestle. I jumped off the Trestle Bridge into the Newark Bay. Like, we had the rope we swung off, you know, the Trestle with and all. This was, my whole life was growing up there. And all I wanted to do was fix Bayonne. And after being a police officer for 28 years, I actually felt I needed to protect the people of Bayonne in a different way. Instead of protecting them as a police officer, I decided I think I needed to really protect them and become mayor. And I took a shot. And to be honest with you, there wasn't a person in Bayonne that I knew that actually believed I had a chance at winning until it was that night. And we showed that video, and 225 people who weren't afraid showed up and paid $125 to be in that room with me. And that's why today I'm standing here, and that's why I'm campaigning for another 4 years, because it means that much to me, that we are where we are now, which is a heck of a lot better than we were 4 years ago. But we got a long way to go, and we need to keep going forward. Because if we go backwards, if we misstep and take a step backwards, it could be devastating to our city. And all of you, whether you're in the real estate business, whether you're in development business, you have to understand what I'm saying. And that's why I'm here and doing a Q&A. Listen, the one thing I will tell you about Q&A is I will answer your question. You may not like an answer, but I'm not going to lie to you. Because if I lie to you within 10, 15 minutes after we talk, you're going to find out that, well, that's not true. This is what he said, and this is what really happened. So I will sit here and I will try and answer every question. I don't think we're going to get to every single question, I'm sure, because I didn't expect this many people in a room. The one thing I will say, and it's on the paper, I have an open door policy. And trust me when I tell you, for 3.5 years, I have an open door policy in City Hall. Sometimes I think I'm a doctor. Because I will walk into my office and there will be 6, 7 people sitting in my office as if, and they don't have an appointment. Some people make appointments. A lot of people don't. They just show up, and I bring them in and I talk to them. And again, I tell them the same thing. I will answer your questions. You may not like the answer, or you may like the answer. And I tell them, I'll say the same thing here. If you come early enough, I will make the coffee. Okay, I make good coffee. I'm pretty good at that, and I do enjoy a cup of coffee. So, but without me just carrying on, I'd rather just listen to you and be able to work this with you. So I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Lisa.
So we did an interview, and about 3,800 people have seen it, and it caused some buzz, some questions. Corrado did some homework. He gathered a lot of questions online. We're going to rotate between online questions he was able to pull and some questions that we're going to put in the box. So if you have your question now is the time to bring it to Anna, who's holding the box. I'm going to try to, as long as it's real estate related, I will read it. If it's something outside of real estate development, he has an open door policy. Okay? So with that being said, Corrado, we're going to ask the mayor to come right in the middle.
Okay.
Corrado's going to start with an online question. I already have 3 questions from the crowd on my phone, so keep getting us questions till I'm done with my 3, and we'll go back and forth. Corrado, you start first.
Sure. So, in terms of giving an incentive to developers, and attracting them to the city, sometimes you have to give, an abatement, right? So there's some residents who aren't happy about abatements at all and would rather not give them out, period. But like I said, incentive, nobody, we have to make it so developers would want to come. So this question is a part 2. There's a part 2 to the question. But can you give a brief explanation of what a tax abatement is, and what are some positives and negatives to tax abatements?
Okay, basically what a tax abatement is, and the misconception with tax abatements, I will say, is a lot of people believe they don't pay taxes. Okay, the truth is they do. They're calculated different. That's all, but they pay taxes. Anybody here who's a developer, you obviously know what I'm talking about. I will give you one example, and it's probably the biggest one, is just going up to 46th Street, okay, where the old Resnick's property was. Okay, so if you take the Resnick's property and the houses that were purchased by the developer, they paid, I think, roughly around $82,000 a year in property taxes. The building, when it's built, will pay $380,000. So what's better? Okay, the biggest problem with it is a lot of people believe that they don't pay taxes. They do. If you look at the properties on the base, okay, Costco, where Costco's going, okay, it's going to pay about $460,000 in taxes. It paid 0 for the last 18 years. So the Halperns are building 525 units. When that's built, it's $1.2 million in taxes.
Annually.
Annually, every year. Paid 0 for the last 18 years. So this is where we have a problem. What was the secondary part of that?
Basically, I mean, you talked about positives. It was what are some positives and negatives?
The biggest negative is what I said earlier, is most people believe that they don't pay taxes, that for 25, you give somebody a 25-year tax abatement, so they don't pay anything. The truth is they pay a minimum of 5 times more than what was there prior. Okay, and our biggest problem is that we have a structural deficit. Okay, so when you take a structural deficit, and I'll explain that, is when I became mayor, I got sworn in July 1st, 2014. They handed me a key to City Hall, I put it in, opened up the door. We were short $24 million. So every tax dollar I collected, I was still short $24 million. And until we get that down to zero, we have major financial problem. Right now, it's down to 18. With these tax abatements on these properties that we are doing now, that are in the ground now, we'll probably bring it down to 8 million. So over the next 5 or 6 years, maybe 7 years, we should be down to something where we can handle it at that point. But until we get there, financially, we're in trouble. And if we don't do this development now, there's no other way to pay for this. You know, prior to me, every administration was doing what I call one-hit wonders. Okay, so what they would do is take a piece of the base and they would sell it, take that money and plug the hole for a year. But plugging the hole doesn't do anything because that structural deficit came back again. So in essence, they were just kicking a can down the road. Okay, I am not kicking any cans down the road. And a lot of people don't like to hear that. But I'm not kicking the can because there's not much of the road left. In a couple years, this city has no way to make up $8 million on its own other than going to the taxpayers and raising their taxes $8 million. And that would be catastrophic to the city of Bayonne if I had to do that. We need, the most important thing we need to do is to get this structural deficit down to zero. Otherwise, we're in financial problems that, you know, at some point you may, you know, you could even say that, you know, if you can't, the state's going to step in. You know, but this is too good of a city to allow this to happen to any further. And these developments that you see today going on, and like you said in the room, most of your developers are real estate agents. Just look where they're taking place. A lot of them were empty lots or businesses that had closed down, you know, 20, 25 years ago. You know, we're not, you don't see us on 6th Street right around the block here knocking down 10 homes and putting up a big building. We're never going to change the fabric, you know, the heart and soul of this city, which is your 1 and 2 family homes in your little neighborhoods. But if you take a plan, which we have, and break down Broadway and Avenue E, and you put these developments up and you put these buildings up, you will change Bayonne for the better financially. But you will also bring back Broadway. And that's what needs to happen. And the only way it's going to happen is bringing people to Bayonne. You know, when I was a kid, this was a refinery town. You know, we were probably one of the first industrial cities in the United States because we go back to, you know, the Rockefellers building Standard Oil here. You know, they all left. And nobody had the foresight to turn around and say, okay, what do we do next? Same thing happened in Pittsburgh. All the steel mills left and Pittsburgh went down into the doldrums till they found themselves a way to, you know, to dig themselves out of the ground. We need to do the same thing. This is a great city. We got, the best thing about us is our location. You know, you look at where Bayonne is and the fact that we're surrounded by water on 3 sides is almost like an insulation for us. And we need to take what we have, which is, you know, real estate agents. What's the best 3 things about real estate? Location, location, and location. That's what we have. And we need to exploit that now because that's what's going to save the city financially.
Thank you.
Okay, sorry. You got to stop me. Okay.
Yeah, I'm going to start interrupting you. This question came from a realtor that's concerned about the area of 17th, 18th, and 19th Street and Avenue C. It sounds like a crime question, but it's a real estate agent question. They're having a hard time getting units rented in a reasonable amount of time because they feel like it needs cleanup. That's all I could say about this question.
Okay, you know what? And again, traditionally, that's the one neighborhood in town where you look, in fact, what was it, a couple months ago, we had a shooting there.
Yes.
Right in front of that store, all right? Yes, which is closed now, which we were able to get that store closed because that gentleman was actually part of the problem. Okay, and what it is, the easiest thing for me to say and do is to put two hats on, one being the retired police officer, one being the mayor, is you sit down, you look in an area, you look what's going on, and you see what's happening, and you identify what your problems are. Okay, we are doing that through the police department now. Part of it was closing that store down. The other part of it is putting cameras in that area, beefing up patrols. During the summer, we took 19th Street, and we have this program that we do throughout the city. It usually starts in April, goes all the way till probably the end of October, where once a week we'll pick 2 streets, and we just no parking on the street for a day, and we clean it from curb to curb, and we trim every tree on that block. And basically what we're trying to do is get people to open up their eyes and say, listen, if you clean the front of your house, this is what your street could always look like. And we've been doing that for 2 years now. We started, the first street we ever did was 19th Street between Broadway and Avenue C. Okay, and this is an area, again, of redevelopment that is in need of redevelopment.
Do you think that closing down the stores and then putting cameras up is solving the problem?
It's solving one of the problems. Okay. The other thing is now is finding a developer with a vision. Finding somebody with a vision who says, hey, listen, I can take these properties and maybe we can do something here. Okay. If you have a depressed, that corner lot, that where that store was, that corner lot could be the start. Okay. We are talking to the owner of that property to say, hey, listen, what do you think about, knocking this building down and putting up something nice? Because that's all it takes is just one building to start changing a neighborhood for the better for everyone, even the people who live on the block. Because the people who live on 19th Street between Broadway and Avenue C, they come in all the time to talk to me. They're the ones who, they helped us when that shooting happened. So they get involved and they want to get involved. But at some point, there were times where they were afraid to come out, and they came to see us, and that's when we put the camera up. That's when we put a police officer out there. And then when something happened that day, they were the ones behind the scenes who, were telling us what was going on and what happened. So.
Appreciate that, Mayor. We're going to take a question from Crowder.
So another question is, how will all this development affect our schools? So when we begin to get, our population begins to rise, people have maybe
the biggest, I mean, I get that question all the time. I think the biggest thing we could say is we're really not attracting, with these buildings, we're not attracting families. Okay, we're attracting young professionals. There's a lot of them in this room here today. My hope and what I've seen happen so far over at Silk Lofts is that you attract the single business person or a couple business person who's married a couple years and they're moving to Bayonne now. The ultimate goal is that they're going to fall in love with Bayonne, and when they decide to have children, they're going to buy a house here. Bayonne is I think that, I'm a little biased being the mayor of Bayonne, but I think Bayonne is the one city in Hudson County that you're going to be able to come to and rent a nice luxury apartment and then be able to buy a home and live here. Not many people who live in, these young professionals that are living in Hoboken, I don't know that they can afford to live in Hoboken, purchase a condo or a house in Hoboken. And then, where here in Bayonne, you're able to, purchase a house. A lot of times you could purchase a house with either a carport or a driveway or, a garage. So we've seen it in Silk Lofts, where people who were one of the first people moving in couples that moved in, who then the wife became pregnant, and then they bought homes in Bayonne. And what happens is now they become part of that neighborhood. And to me, that's the greatest compliment for your city, is when that starts to happen. But as far as the buildings, you know, we've already done studies on the buildings, and these buildings aren't, the ones that are up already are not bringing kids to our district right now.
Okay, so they're smaller units designed for
For-
couples,
yes.
or singles.
Yes. Who's next?
I'm thinking if I should have a follow-up to that. Should these buildings begin to attract children, do you have an idea of how to deal with it?
That's a real estate question. I mean, you tell me, because the real estate market, how's the real estate market in Bayonne? Are there enough, do we have enough housing stock on the market? That's a good thing.
No, so prices are rising, but
Yeah.
my question is, if these developments are attracting families with children, which studies are showing they're not. So
Right.
there's no problem, so we're not solving a problem
Right.
that doesn't exist. But should there be a problem down the road, we'll address it then. Do you have an idea what that would look like? Is it opening more schools, expanding
Well, I think
schools?
the one thing that I've talked to, and I've had this conversation with the Board of Ed, is, you know, before you would start building new schools, because it's a very expensive venture to build a new school, is probably doing a middle school.
Okay.
And doing K through 5 and then 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, like at Midtown School, which can hold 1,400 students. So you would take your either 6th and 7th graders or your 5th, 6th, and 7th, which now opens up classroom space in all the grammar schools.
I'm going to throw in another question here from someone in the audience. Where do you see Bayonne in the next 15 to 20 years? In 60 seconds.
15 to 20, 15, probably. 15 to 20 years, I'm probably pushing daisies up.
Not where you see yourself, but where do you see the city?
You know what? I honestly, if you think about where we are now and what we have done in 3 years, in 15 to 20 years from now, you are going to see what, if you talk to senior citizens today, and they will tell you how great Bayonne was when they were younger, and even myself, I'll tell you like the 60s, well, not the 60s, but the 70s and the 80s, what it was like growing up here. 15 to 20 years from now, you're going to have a whole new generation talking about that. You're going to have a city that is a very vibrant city, which it was when I was younger, but it was a blue-collar town because you had all this industry in town. I think Broadway you'll have cafes, you'll have restaurants. You know, God knows where they're going with computers, and how is that going to affect, you know, storefronts, you know, with people going, you know, coming up with ideas for other things, you know, and stuff for our kids. But I think Bayonne's going to be a bustling town in 15 to 20 years from now.
Do you see big companies coming here?
What do you mean by big companies?
Like big employers?
I don't know. You know, if
I
you
don't know
15 to
about-
20 years from now, I don't know if there's going to be such thing as big employers anymore. You know, when you think about where we're going, you're not bringing back Exxon. You know,
I'm thinking
Costco's coming.
the headquarters to Amazon was off the table. But
Yes,
something
that
like
what
that
we did.
would've-
We didn't
would've-
win that, and that's because someone didn't have vision. First time I will tell Amazon they didn't have vision. You could get Bezos in here right now, and I'll tell him he didn't have vision, because if he was looking for a second home, and he wanted it on the East Coast, we had the best property for him to be at. And I'll tell all of you, because think about it. You come underneath that Verrazano Bridge, you would see Amazon before you saw Lady Liberty. And how better can it be than that? You'll see Amazon before you see, you know, the New York skyline. You know, he could have created his own little, you know, city here to where he could have really opened people's eyes to what his company was about. You know, whether they really came and looked at Bayonne or not, I have no idea. I could tell you we put in a really nice pitch to try and get them here. As soon as I heard it on the radio, I was actually driving to work that morning when it came over the radio that they were looking, and all I thought about was the military ocean terminal.
This is a question live right now.
Okay.
From your Facebook Live feed. Are there any plans to increase the 5% pilot monies to the Board of Ed? Other towns have gone to 20% and higher.
Right. Right now, no. And the reason I say no is we did 5%.
This is the answers that people are not going to
Yes,
like.
yeah, no, no.
Okay.
It's like I said, because I'm not going to lie to you. I will go right back to our structural deficit. Okay, our structural deficit is on the shoulders of our taxpayers. So the Board of Education gets every penny they ask for. The pilots do not affect the Board of Education. What I did was give them 5% of the pilot, which is a third funding source. So they get whatever they ask for plus the 5%. But my biggest problem financially for the city of Bayonne is getting the structural deficit down to zero. Now, with the pilots, traditionally what happens with them is 5% of that pilot goes to your county tax rate. And that's all the county gets. We get, the city, for my budget, I get 95% of that money. And that's why I need, and right now, I need to get, I can't stress upon you any harder than that structural deficit needs to come down to zero. Okay, we're working, one of the things I will say, I have a teacher right here in front of me, Jenny. You know, we're all talking about school safety, okay? Or we saw what happened in Florida, and then we had our, you know, our problems here in the city of Bayonne. I've already said to the Board of Education that I am working on hiring Class 3 police officers, which are retired police officers within the last 5 years, and I'm going to put a police officer in every school, a retired police officer. I will pay for it. That's $800,000 to $1 million. That's annually that'll cost to put a police officer in that, and saves us a lot of money, because if I hire police officers like Colorado, they make a lot more money. Sorry about that, but I'm throwing you under the bus. But they make a lot more money because you're paying their salary, you're paying their pension payments, and you're paying part of their benefits. Okay, a retired police officer, I'm just paying them. There's no pension, there's no benefits.
There's no benefits or anything.
No, there's no benefits, there's no pension. Okay, and we pay them a lot less money than what we pay out as a police officer would make. And that's, you know, again, that's part of where we can work together with the Board of Education. Down the road, we get this structural deficit down to zero. Hopefully we don't have to do pilots anymore.
Yeah.
You know, hopefully we get to that point where people don't want, you know, hey, listen, we don't need to do pilots, and developers want to come in. The main thing with pilots is you're not going to, and any developer in the room here, you tell me if I'm wrong, but you're not going to get the developers in here unless you're offering some incentive to them. And that's how they get their financing from the banks, is that they can show this incentive to the banks and show what their payments are going to be. And that's how we get them to come in here.
Corrado, we're going to take a question from you. If you could give me question number 7, because there's another question connected to that live. I want to bang out both at the same time. So
Sure.
you ask yours, I'm going to ask this one.
With the increase in development in Bayonne, when will residents start to see taxes stabilize?
And Patty says online right now, do you see our taxes ever coming down? I'm born and raised here, purchased our home in 2009, and my taxes were $11K, and now they are almost $13K and going up.
Okay, again, well, I say, listen, I'm not going to lie to you. Taxes aren't going down right now. They're not. All right. Anybody who's campaigning and looks you in the eye and tells you, you vote for me, I will lower your taxes, they're lying to you, because it goes back to the structural deficit. Okay, I'm bringing the structural deficit down. It's at 18 million. If I don't raise taxes, or if I cut taxes, then the 18 million goes the other way again, and we're back in a hole. We have nothing left to sell in this city. Okay, I'll tell you a quick story. I don't know if anybody here know the company Gel Spice on Hook Road. Okay, Gel Spice is right next to our central garage where we have our DPW trucks, the DPW works out of. It's the garage that fixes all of our vehicles for the city. It's where all the police cars are and everything. They're right next door to that, and Gel Spice needs to expand, which is a great thing. They've been here since the 1950s. They don't want to leave. They want to stay here. So I had come up with a plan where I was talking with them, and I was going to sell them the central garage. I was going to take the money from that sale and build a new central garage over on East 5th Street across from the, if you see where the school buses park, okay, we own that property. So I was going to build a new central garage there. We don't own it. They sold it to Hudson County, and we're paying it back. So there was no way for me to sell it to keep Gel Spice here, which so far I have kept Gel Spice here. But that was one of the things they sold to plug a hole. And that's what I'm talking about as far as plugging holes. We can't be plugging holes no more. We have nothing left to sell. Stabilized taxes, yes, we could start stabilizing. Over the last 3 years, if you look at the municipal part of the budget, we have lowered what we have risen, I guess you should say. Last year, I think we were at
increase.
Yes, we are coming down to the point where we're getting comfortable. Not that we're ever comfortable about raising taxes because you never want to. Stabilize, yes, taxes will absolutely start to stabilize. When will they start coming down? Till you get down to that 4 million mark, 3 million mark as far as a structural deficit, then you can start talking about how we can start working together and lowering taxes.
Question, do you expect and how will you bring high-end retailers to open up on Broadway? Do you expect, and if you do, how would you do it?
When you know what, I'm going
This
to...
is from someone in here,
Okay.
so thank you.
I don't know who to look at, but you know what it is when I'm going to be honest with you, high-end retailers coming to Main Street USA, I'm sorry, I think them days are over. When I was a kid, and I know I'm not as old as I think I am, but I am old. We did all our shopping on Broadway. Okay, I remember M&Ms. Anything I needed, my parents took me to Broadway, and you whatever you were looking to purchase, pants, suits, shoes, you had shoe stores all over the place. There were some on Avenue, you had Hyman's and Rand's on Avenue C. I mean, everything you needed was at your fingertips just going up on Broadway. And then the Staten Island Mall was built. And I remember the first time going to the Staten Island Mall thinking, wow, this is the greatest thing on earth. Everything's inside. If it's summertime, it's cool. If it's wintertime, it's hot, it's warm. If it's raining, it's dry. They killed Main Street USA. Amazon and these other companies are killing the malls. So our kids are going to see what I would consider like the death of malls. The malls are going to start closing down because retailers cannot afford brick and mortar anymore and compete with online stores.
Hence Toys R Us.
Yes, yeah, perfect example. I mean, I do it myself now where, I used to go to Joseph A. Banks to buy suits, or Men's Warehouse. Now I go online, they mail them to me a day later. If I don't like them, I mail them right back. It don't cost me anything. If I like them, I keep them. I go to my tailor. He, fits them for me, and I wear it, a week later. I don't, because, what's that?
We need more tailors.
We need more tailors.
We're gonna take a question from Corrado.
So this question is about senior housing. So we have a big senior population in Bayonne. What are we doing for them, and can you talk to, in particular, about the project on Oak Street?
Okay, how someone knew they purchased that property, I don't know. The Housing Authority, we had identified property to the Housing Authority because one of the biggest things I've always said is I'm not going to leave anybody behind. Okay, yes, are we looking to bring people in? Yeah, we're looking to bring people in, but we also don't want to leave who's here behind. On Oak Street, they had bought property that was owned by Public Service, and they are going to put up their first senior building probably since, probably 23rd Street, and Avenue A was built in the 70s. And so, and the good thing about that is they'll have parking underneath, some commercial, possibly some commercial space on the bottom. But the apartments, once they get to that 4th floor and higher, they will have a beautiful view of the Manhattan skyline from where they will be. This is what what I go back to saying is you don't leave people behind. Plus, there's an aging population in Bayonne who own homes in Bayonne that at some point want to downsize. I've been trying to convince my parents for years now, but my mother will not move out of her house. It's her house, and she's not leaving it. So, but this is all part of a grand scheme of taking the city as a whole and working with every little piece of it and working with each person in it so that we go towards the future and we don't forget anybody.
We're going to ask a question from the audience. With all the development happening in Bayonne, will that also include the preservation of historic landmarks and classically built homes and buildings?
Yes, we have the Historical Society here in Bayonne. Whoever asked that question, I don't know if you're a member of it, but you should be if you're interested in that. There are a lot of homes that yes, I mean, you look at the museum. We call it a museum. I don't know why, but they named it a museum on 9th Street, which was Commercial Trust when I was a little kid. That building is historical landmark. So, yes, there are a lot of homes in Bayonne that are historically already part of a landmark. Basically, what that says is you cannot change the outside of that building. It has to remain what it is. But the inside, someone can purchase it. You look at the house on 3rd Street and Broadway. The family that redid that house, that's one of the prettiest houses in Bayonne. I go past it every day when I go home. I love that house.
Awesome. Any questions on your end?
Yeah.
I have more? Okay.
So with all the development going on in Bayonne, give us the 2 projects that you're most proud of.
Ooh.
2 projects I'm most proud of. It has to be development? Because one, I'll tell you what, did anybody here go to Bayonne High School? Okay. Vet Stadium. How great does Vet Stadium look?
Yes.
Right? I was down there today taking photos, and it goes back to, because I do this thing with all the kids. We have student councils. If anybody has kids in grammar school and high school, we have student councils. So what I do is I bring them in, each school comes in, I do Q&A in my office with them, I show them my office, different things in my office, and then we go in, and they go into council chambers and they run their own meeting for themselves. And then I do Q&A with them afterwards. And the biggest thing I always say to them is that you have to give back. If you're going to become part of a community, whether you move out of Bayonne when you get older and get married and have children and live somewhere else, you have to find a way to give back to your community. That stadium, me going to Bayonne High School, me as a kid playing, in the Bayonne Invitational Touch League through the Department of Parks, the City League baseball leagues, everything they had. For me to be able to come in and actually get that project done was something near and dear to me, to my heart, just to give back to the kids at Bayonne High School and Marist High School to play on a field like that, because they deserve it in this day and age. Development-wise, I will say, I can't just pick one, but I will say the 19th to 22nd Street area. I think that project there with the Ingerman, 19 East, the old Nicoretta, and these are all vacant lots. Nicoretta Construction, C.J. Murphy Fuel, I mean, that was empty for how long? And Bayonne Plumbing. Because the biggest thing I always said when I was campaigning 4 years ago was that, every city along the light rail developed along the light rail and benefited from that economic boost that the light rail gave them, except the city of Bayonne. And that's why I say when someone's talking and saying, all this development you're doing and this is reckless and, oh my God, you got all, listen, look at where these developments are. They were vacant lots. They were empty, like Doolin's gas station. I knew the Doolins. Like that gas station closed in the 90s. And what have we been looking at? An empty shell of a gas station. C.J. Murphy's closed 15 years ago. Bayonne Plumbing, they actually closed, they bought it back, and then they closed it again. And what's there? The light rail is right there. How did we not develop? And that's before even going over to the military ocean terminal, which we've had for 17 years now.
This question is about affordable housing. So with the new developments going on, will there be affordable housing in these developments? And if so, what's the percentage?
Okay, there is no affordable housing in the developments that are being built now. Reason being is because we are way above our COA requirements. And the other side of the coin is we are identifying and working with the Bayonne Housing Authority to add more housing stock and more affordable housing through them. Because this way they run the buildings. That's what they do. They're very good at it, and it's easier to to partner with someone who knows how to do it.
Somebody asked, with all the development, what, they all start with the same question, right? With all the development, what's the plan if the apartments do not get rented? That's a very smart question. How many apartments for Section 8?
How many are? Say that again.
What's so funny? It's a serious question.
I didn't. You got to repeat it because someone
I'm gonna
cut
repeat
you
it
off.
one more time. With all the development, what is the plan if the apartments do not get rented? Then another question, how many apartments for Section 8?
None of the apartments are for Section 8. Okay, none of the buildings are being built where they have to put in any requirement of Section 8. Again, like I said with the question before, is the city of Bayonne itself, with their COA requirements, which is your affordable housing, is way above what they need to have. With that being said, we go back to what I said earlier, is you don't leave anybody behind. Okay, that's why we are working with the Housing Authority. As far as, I'm not a negative person. I firmly believe that these developers are not coming into Bayonne and spending tens of millions of dollars to put these buildings up, not thinking and not doing their homework that people are not going to come to Bayonne. You're all real estate agents here. You see, we're getting people from Brooklyn. We're getting people from Hoboken, from downtown Jersey City, that are getting priced out in their areas, and they're looking for a new home. And when I go back to what I said earlier about real estate, you're talking about location, location, location. That's what we have. We're not that refinery city, that industrial city anymore. Now we have to take what we have, which is our location, and I honestly, people are just waiting to come to Bayonne to move here. They're just waiting for these buildings to go up. Which
brings me to what is happening with the Ferry Terminal.
Okay. I've been negotiating for 2.5 years with the Port Authority. We're at that point. I got to word this right. I am very confident that we will end up with a ferry in Bayonne.
Somebody wrote, when will the bar and restaurant scene come alive?
We all laugh, but think about the people we're trying to attract here, and that's what they want. That's all going to start falling into place now. I can tell you last week, we actually had someone come in from Manhattan who owns 3 or 4 restaurants in Manhattan looking to open up. Another one that owns a chain where he owns 19 different higher-end sports bar type restaurants. And they're looking the crazy part is they're actually looking at Broadway right now because they feel that's where all the beginning of this is going to be. The second phase of that will be over by the military ocean terminal, because once that military ocean terminal starts building up and people start moving in, with the ferry's a game changer, but once that starts building, people start moving in, this town's going to move very quickly. It's going to move very quickly.
I want to add, this is a teacher question. I know we've addressed teachers, but I love the development. But as an educator who is constantly hearing how underfunded the Bayonne School District is when it comes to settling teachers' contracts, I want to know how developers and realtors are going to help make sure our education system is fully funded and a selling point for you, I guess the consumer, for you the consumer. We are underfunded and need your help. So the question is for you,
yes,
and for realtors, and for developers.
All right, I'll answer for me. You can answer for the realtors. When you think about it, last year, We received, I think, $2.6 million extra from the state. Friday, we received an extra $2.8 million. They are working in Trenton. I had lunch with Senator Sweeney 2 weeks ago down in Trenton, and they are working on a new funding formula for schools, which helps the city of Bayonne immensely because we are what they consider one of the most underfunded school districts in the state of New Jersey. Again, that equates to tax dollars too. You know, we get more funding from the state, that helps us on the tax end. As far as developers, you know, I don't know where that goes. The one thing I will say as a parent of a fifth grader, I want nothing more than teachers to finally come to work with nothing else to worry about but teaching our children. You know, when I came into office, they were almost 5 years without a contract. Now, again, they're with, since last September. Since September, again, they're without a contract. With this extra money that's coming in, you know, I am going to have a conversation with them because I am pretty much out of these negotiations now that we have an elected school board. But again, in my heart and soul, all I want is our teachers to come to school every single day with nothing else to worry about than educating our children. Because for so many years, it hasn't happened in Bayonne. And there's so much stress put on them. Okay, I always say this, like I was a police officer for 28 years and people are like, oh, I don't know how you could do that. Let me tell you something, try and be a teacher. My son's 11 years old, okay? I might be able to handle him all day long by myself. Give me 25 more like him. And then try and educate him. And try and get him to act right. There is nothing more, and believe me, I have told the Board of Education that I will work with them. I will do whatever it is to help them get to where they should be. Because it would make me, and I'm talking just as a dad, it would make me happy as anything that our teachers, again, have nothing to worry about but coming to school. You know, I just watched my sister. My sister's a teacher in Jersey City, so we all saw what happened Friday. And then they settled it Sunday night. You know, how bad is that? Is that we got to push our teachers to do this? You know, my sister called.
With the help of the mayor kind of negotiating?
I don't know how.
A judge ordered them to go back.
Well, no, they weren't going to go back. My sister's a teacher. They were not going back. But think about what we're doing. Think about what teachers are. Teachers are our future. Okay, because it's our children. Again, I will say it, you know, it's a profession that is one of the near and dear. You're talking about people who have to go get an education, that have to spend money to get a degree. And what are we paying them? And every time they go for a contract, people will complain that they're getting a contract. But without them, where does this country go? Where do we go as parents? You know, think about educating your own child. Trying to work and educate your own child. You know, it's impossible. You know, and then we rely on them. And I think, personally, I think we put too much stress on them because we're asking them to do more than just educate them.
Yeah.
You
And
know?
to answer the question that someone had posed for the realtors, we got a job. So we can't fix teachers' problems. We got to fix our own problems in real estate. So thank you for the answer to that.
I just want to finish with one thing, if you don't mind.
Sure. 'Cause
The one thing I will say is I don't care what anybody's, my son goes right around the block to Mary J, and he's in 5th grade, and every teacher every year he's had is phenomenal. And I'm not just saying this, I mean it, and I visit the schools all the time. We have great teachers, but you can't lose them. And you're gonna lose them if you don't start getting them where they need to be and making them happy. And let them do what they're trained to do, and that's teach our children.
and this is something you have little control over as mayor.
Yes, I wish I
Because
had
you're not-
more.
You're no longer part of, okay. I have a few more questions. Do we have any more time? Anyone keeping time? Are we good? I'm gonna ask the few that are left, and then if you don't mind, we'll take one or two questions
Sure.
that didn't make it. So, some of these are repetitive, but I'm gonna go through them. Are there any new plans you would like to share tonight?
You guys are really putting me on a spot. Well, I got a gift to myself. We're having Starbucks is coming to Bayonne.
Where is it going?
Starbucks, I'll tell you exactly where. Is it okay? Joe's yelling at me now.
Are we all right? Okay.
We were supposed to have an announcement on that. I'm sorry, but I had
So
to
you
throw it out.
heard it exclusively at Provident Legacy tonight.
Joe's yelling at me now, so I'm going to get in trouble. But
No, don't get in trouble.
that's all
Joe.
campaigning.
Tell
But
Joe I'm the mayor.
it's across the street from
I
the
can do this.
Costco.
Oh, there you go.
It'll be right across the street from Costco. It'll be standalone with a drive-through.
Where do you
Now I'm
see
in trouble.
Bayonne in the next 5 to, we answered that. Do you feel with the new development, are we going to get the city's deficit down to zero? You talked a lot about that.
Yes.
Will it go down to zero?
You know what? I firmly believe we will get it down to zero. The biggest thing is getting it down to where you're, 4 million, 5 million, 3 million, because then you can deal with it. You can make some cuts here and there, and you can deal. I'll give you one example of not kicking a can down the road, if you don't mind me talking.
Sure. No.
We just did it. We added a 2-year extension to our police and fire. Okay, they got 2% raises over the next 2 years. Okay, but one of the givebacks that I was able to get back from them is they did away with longevity for all new hirees. Okay, I believe that longevity is 23%. So think about that, what a police officer makes, and he'll make the new officers today, because over the next couple years, police and firemen we're going to be hiring a lot of, because we have so many retiring. Because back in the early 90s, we had these big classes. So I went in and negotiated with them, and the give back I got, and this is what I talk about, not kicking a can down the road, and then also looking to fix the finances of the city, not just perfectly for today, but for further down the road. But if you took a police officer today who makes $100,000 a year and you went, 19 years later, that same police officer would make $77,000. So that's a lot of money saving on the city. We won't see that savings until, when they start hitting longevity, which I think their first one is 10 years.
2 more questions here. Could you go into details other than the one you already went into, about
Got me
the
in trouble
development, on the development at the MOT? So anything we haven't heard yet happening?
Well, right now, by the time the summer rolls around, KRE, which is Harbor Station North, is breaking ground with their first 400 units. Halpern is in the ground already. That's 525 units. The Guptas broke ground 2 weeks ago, and their first phase is 98 units, and they just took down a second one of their properties. I can't tell you what that's going to be, because someone's in the background that's going to yell at me if I give out another gift to everybody. And then you have Costco coming. The biggest thing is that Costco is definitely coming. Costco will break ground by the end of this month. They're shooting to open up 4th of July weekend. I don't know that that's going to happen. Yeah.
It's nothing really. It's a box.
So
You know where the firehouse is on the base on the military ocean terminal? Right across from it where used to be that tent.
that tent,
The
right?
BCB pavilion, it's going right on that property.
Okay. Awesome. All right. So one more question, and then we'll open up for a few. Are there any maps, aerial maps showing the current, future developments? Are there any major retail developments projects in the near future? So 2 questions.
There are, but you know what? They're at a phase where, if you're a developer in a room, you know what I'm talking about. I really can't come out and say it. But there's quite a few developments that are going to come, but for me to see, I can't come
Tonight is
out
not
and
the
say
night
it.
to
Yeah,
announce.
it's too early for me to announce ones that we're going through the process with now. So I'll just leave it at that so I don't get myself in trouble.
He answered every single question. I mean, that's pretty good.
Thank you.
I have a question for all of you. Would you like to see this again, happen again? Yes. Did you learn? Yes. All right, good. So, would you allow us to do this again?
Yeah, I don't care.
Joe?
I'll
we
talk
got
to
your
anybody.
approval? We can do this again, Joe?
May 9th, after you all vote for us.
All right, well.
It's not supposed to be political.
Yeah, it's not a political thing, but why don't we give him a round of applause?
Thank you. I just want to finish with one thing. And again, you know, like I said, I will stand here. I will answer questions. I will not duck anything. I'm sure I didn't get to everybody's question or concern. Please don't hesitate to come see me. Come to my office. You can call and set up an appointment and come see me, or you could stop by. If I'm not in a meeting, you will come right in and sit down in my office and we'll talk. If I'm in a meeting, they'll tell you how long that meeting is projected to be. If you want to wait, you can wait, or they will give you a appointment to come back and see me. But please, again, I'm here to work for you. I work for the people of Bayonne. They don't work for me. I'm only here because they're the ones who voted to put me where I am. Thank you.